Hi, this is Lau from TGL. If you're new to shipping or even as a seasoned importer and don't want to get trapped with uncontrolled costs, you're going to want to watch this video. One of the things that we always come across in the many years I've been in the industry is that you'll have a lot of new shippers that come to the market and they will go find some suppliers from regions that they've never imported from. And they will negotiate with the supplier and say, hey, how much for the goods? And they'll come to an agreement. They can't fill a container, so they need to go less than container load mode because that's the most cost-effective way to move something internationally. LCL is less than container load. It simply means that when you don't have enough cargo to occupy a full shipping container, you go to a freight forwarder such as us and you buy a certain space within that container shared with other people who cannot fill that container. More often than not, the new buyer of that goods or the new shipper will then go to the supplier and say, hey, we've negotiated the cost of the goods now. Can you organize shipping to my country? And then these factories will provide a price to these new shippers and it will look very attractive. And this is where the trap gets set. Now, when I say trap, I'm not saying that the supplier is aware of it, nor is the customer or, at that stage. But the system itself is built around when that scenario happens, the importer is going to get bitten because the supplier will offer a pricing. More often than not, it's going to be super attractive. Almost one of those things too good to be true. And this is where the communication breakdown happens because the new buyer thinks when he asks the supplier for a quote for shipping, the new buyer, from my experience, assumes whatever the shipping quote that the supplier has given me will be door to door. But more often than not, than I've seen, when a supplier quotes under this type of interaction, they are not quoting door to door. They're only quoting from the origin door, which is in China, from their factory, all the way to the arrival port. So if I'm sitting in Sydney, the arrival port of Sydney, there is one silo of fees missing because if they're just quoting to Sydney port, what happens from Sydney port to my door? So that's missing. So this is the part that often doesn't get discussed between the buyer, the new buyer, and the supplier. And that's often missed. You run into two surprises. The first surprise is pretty legitimate, right? You haven't captured the final silo of fees from the arrival Australian port to your door. So you've got the de-consolidation fees. Once the container arrives as an LCL, your goods has to come out of the container, right? You got to go through customs clearance. Then you got to go through local paperwork shuffling fees, and then you got the final delivery fee to your door. Those are physical actions. You have to pay for those. So that might be a bit of a shock because that can, depending on the size of your shipment, that's at least $300, $400, $500. For a small importer, that can be quite a shock. Rule number one, Incoterms 101, you must understand your Incoterms. If you don't, ask your freight forwarder. Don't negotiate CIF terms when you are dealing with your suppliers. Negotiate ex-works or FOB terms. This will cut out a lot of this problem. And a good freight forwarder should always tell you that. Don't negotiate anything CIF because you're not in control of who is moving your goods from their door to your country. And when you lose control, once the goods is with that party, they can hold your goods at ransom. So ex-works and FOB terms, you get to choose who moves that international leg of your shipment. And that means that you have the control. So that is very important. Seek out a reliable freight forwarder. Don't ever ask someone who's not in shipping about shipping. Don't start negotiating, then start the shipping conversation after the fact. You have to start the conversation with the freight forwarder while you're talking with the supplier of your goods. It's very important because that freight forwarder can give you valuable advice on how to negotiate, what type of terms to negotiate, so you're 100% clear of the shipping process. Make sure you understand the shipping costs. We see a lot of new and up-and-coming importers or buyers of goods that have gone on to Alibaba or whatever it is. They've sourced all these different type of goods and they've already negotiated rates and they've come to a freight forwarder and go, I bought here, I bought there, I bought this, can you put it all together and ship it over? That sounds like a pretty easy thing to do, but it's not, because there's so many pitfalls. So again, don't think because the price looks good on a website of a product, you're thinking you can make a buck or two. You're going to be shocked once you find out what the shipping cost will be, what the taxes could be, what the duties will be by the time you get here. So don't waste your time. Again, every time you consider a new shipping project, engage in a reputable, reliable freight forwarder.